October 28, 1943. 5th Bomber Command Headquarters, Port Moresby, New Guinea. Colonel James Whitcomb stares at the casualty reports spread across his desk. In the past 6 weeks, his B-24 squadrons have lost 47 bombers to Japanese fighter attacks. That's 470 men, dead, missing, or prisoner. The numbers are unsustainable. At current loss rates, no bomber crew will statistically complete their required 25-mission tour. The math is simple. 40% losses on unescorted missions to heavily defended targets. 4 missions, maybe 5. Then you're done. The meeting room fills with smoke and frustration. Intelligence officers spread reconnaissance photos across the table. Rabaul Harbor, the most heavily defended target in the Southwest Pacific. Over 300 Japanese Zero fighters stationed within striking distance. We need fighter escort, Major Richard Hayes, operations officer, says for the 3rd time this week. P-38s can't reach that far, not with current fuel capacity. Whitcomb knows what Hayes isn't saying. The bombers go alone or they don't go at all. And if they don't go, Japanese shipping continues unmolested. The entire island-hopping campaign stalls. What about defensive armament? Someone asks. Can we improve the gunners' effectiveness? Captain Edward Morrison, the group armament officer, shakes his head. Tail gunners are achieving 8% hit rates against stern attacks. That's consistent with training expectations. The problem isn't the gunners, it's the ammunition. Morrison pulls out a technical bulletin. Some crews in the European theater are experimenting with increased incendiary rounds. Field reports suggest the 2-2-1 loading, 2 armor-piercing, 2 incendiary, 1 tracer, is effective against German fighters. And on B-24s, Whitcomb asks, "Prohibited, sir. Technical Order 9043-157. The incendiary rounds generate excessive barrel heat. On B-24, the turrets are too close to fuel cells. One catastrophic jam during combat, and you've got a fireball." The room falls silent. Whitcomb looks at the casualty list again. 47 bombers in 6 weeks. The window to stop Japanese reinforcement is closing. "Gentlemen," he says quietly, "if we don't solve this problem, we'll lose the air campaign in the Pacific by Christmas." The meeting adjourns with no answers. That same night, 90 miles away at WWII airfield, a 23-year-old tail gunner named Michael Russo sits in his tent with a hand-cranked ammunition linking machine, doing something that could get him court-martialed. Before we continue, if you're fascinated by the untold stories that changed World War II, hit that subscribe button. 78% of you watching aren't subscribed yet, and you're missing stories like this every week. Staff Sergeant Michael Russo grew up in Pittsburgh steel mills. No college, no officer training, just a high school dropout who enlisted at 19 because factory work was killing his father. The Army assigned him to gunnery school, not because he showed aptitude, but because at 5'7" and 148 pounds, he could fit into the B-24's cramped tail turret. 6 weeks of training at Harlingen, Texas. Range qualifications, average. Instructor notes, adequate trigger discipline, satisfactory maintenance. Nothing exceptional. He arrived at WWII in August 1943 as a replacement gunner. His first 3 combat missions taught him everything the training didn't. Mission 1, WWII Airfield. Russo fired 420 rounds at 2 attacking Zeros. Post-mission gun camera footage showed every tracer passing harmlessly behind the targets. Both fighters survived. 1 bomber in his formation didn't. Mission 2, Rabaul Shipping. Russo engaged 4 fighters, expended 680 rounds, 0 confirmed hits. 3 bombers from his group went down that day. One of them carried his bunkmate. Mission 3, Finchhafen. Russo watched a Zero make a textbook stern attack on the bomber beside him. The tail gunner fired continuously, standard ammunition. Tracers sparked off the Zero's engine cowling, the wings, the fuselage. The fighter didn't even break off its attack run. It just kept coming. Cannon fire shredding the bomber's control surfaces until the B-24 rolled inverted and dropped toward the ocean. Russo counted 9 Americans in the water. The rescue boats only found 3. That night, Russo sat on his bunk and did the mathematics. 3 missions, 3 bomber losses in his formations. He'd fired over 300 rounds total. 0 confirmed kills. The problem wasn't his aim. It was the ammunition. He remembered something from a briefing 2 months earlier, a memo from European theater operations. B-17 groups were experimenting with higher ratios of incendiary rounds, something about German fighters being more vulnerable to thermal damage. Russo walked to the squadron intelligence tent and found the file. Field Report 43-087. Increased incendiary loading shows promise against FW-190 fighters. Recommend further evaluation. Then he found the prohibition memo. Technical Order 9043-157. B-24 aircraft prohibited from using 2-2-1 ammunition loading. Excessive barrel heat creates catastrophic failure risk. Violation punishable by court-martial. Russo read it 3 times, then he read the casualty list from yesterday's mission. 12 bombers lost, 120 men. He made his decision. On the night of October 30th, Russo approached the ordnance tent. Supply Sergeant James Wheeler was closing up for the night. "Sarge, I need to repair a damaged ammo belt. Can I borrow some rounds and a linking machine?" Wheeler barely looked up. "Sign the log. Return it by morning." Russo took 1,000 rounds of M2 armor-piercing, 1,000 rounds of M1 incendiary tracer, and a hand-cranked linking machine. Back in his tent, he worked by flashlight for 3 hours. 2 armor-piercing, 2 incendiary, 1 tracer. Click, 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 click. 2-2-1, 2-2-1, 2-2-1. The metallic rhythm echoed in the darkness. His tent mate, Corporal Eddie Garcia, woke up around midnight. "Russo, what the hell are you doing?" "Fixing a problem." Garcia squinted at the ammunition belts. His eyes widened. "Jesus Christ. That's 2-2-1 loading. That's against regulations. Yeah, you'll get court-martialed." Russo didn't look up from his work. "Maybe, but I figure a court-martial beats dying because my ammunition doesn't work." Garcia watched for a long moment. Then he grabbed his own ammunition cans. "Show me how to link them." October 31st, 1943. Russo loads his modified ammunition into Devil's Daughter's tail turret before dawn. He tells no one except Garcia, who's done the same for his waist gun position. But Sergeant Frank Pierce, the crew chief, notices something during pre-flight inspection. "Russo, let me see those belts." Russo's stomach drops. Pierce examines the ammunition, counting the pattern. 2 AP, 2 incendiary, 1 tracer. "Where'd you get authorization for this loading?" "I didn't." Pierce's face goes red. "You didn't? So you're running prohibited ammunition on my aircraft?" "Sarge, the standard loading doesn't." "I don't care what it doesn't do." Pierce jabs a finger at Russo's chest. "You're a goddamn tail gunner, not an ordnance engineer. You think you know better than the people who designed these systems?" "I think I know what works." "Based on what?" 3 combat missions. I've been maintaining B-24s since 41. That incendiary loading will warp your barrels, ignite fuel vapors, or jam your guns at exactly the moment you need them. Pierce rips the ammunition belts out of the turret. "You'll use standard 5-1 loading. That's an order." That afternoon, Russo tries a different approach. He goes directly to Captain Morrison, the squadron armament officer. Morrison's office smells like gun oil and paperwork. "Captain, I'd like to request authorization for modified ammunition loading." Morrison doesn't even look up from his reports. "Request denied." "Sir, I haven't explained the tactical rationale." "You don't need to." Morrison finally meets his eyes. "I know exactly what you're asking for. The 2-2-1 incendiary loading that's working in Europe. And I know exactly why it's prohibited on B-24. He pulls out a technical manual. "See this? Thermal stress analysis. Your tail turret operates 18 inches from the fuselage fuel cell. The B-17's tail turret is 34 inches away. That 16-inch difference is why they can risk it and we can't." "But sir, the zeros." "Sergeant," Morrison's voice hardens. "I've read the field reports. I know the incendiary rounds are effective. I also know that if your guns fail during combat because of overheating, you're dead, your crew is dead, and I'm the one who has to write letters to 10 families explaining that their sons died because I authorized an experimental ammunition load." Morrison stands. "The answer is no. And if I catch you using prohibited ammunition, you'll face court-martial." Dismissed. November 1st, 1943. Word spreads through the squadron that Russo tried to get authorization for modified ammo. Master Sergeant Donald Webb, the squadron NCO, calls Russo into his tent. I heard you've been asking about 2-2-1 loading. Yes, Sergeant, and that you were told no, twice. Yes, Sergeant. Webb leans back in his chair. Let me be very clear, Russo. If you load that ammunition without authorization, you're violating a direct technical order. That's destruction of government property. In a combat zone, that carries a mandatory court-martial. He slides a document across the desk. This is Article 108 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. Maximum penalty, 5 years confinement, dishonorable discharge. Do you understand? Russo reads the document. His hands don't shake. I understand, Sergeant. Good, then we're done here. Russo walks out of the tent. That night he relinks his ammunition belts anyway. Garcia finds him working by flashlight again. They threatened you with court-martial, didn't they? Yeah, and you're still doing it. Russo feeds another belt through the linking machine. Click, 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 click. I watched 9 men drown yesterday because standard ammunition didn't stop 1-0. I'll take my chances with a court-martial. Garcia sits down beside him. I'm keeping my modified belts too. 2 other gunners, Corporal Sam Mitchell and Private James Booker, quietly approach Russo over the next 2 days. They don't ask for authorization. They just ask him to show them how to link the belts. November 2nd, 1943. Mission briefing, 0530 hours. Target, Japanese shipping at Rabaul Harbor. 12-hour round trip requiring formation assembly over Oro Bay, navigation across the Solomon Sea, the bomb run itself, and the long return to Dabadjura. Intelligence estimates moderate fighter opposition, 20 to 30 zeros. Intelligence is wrong by a factor of 4. Devil's Daughter occupies the number 3 position in the low squadron, a relatively protected spot in the formation. Lieutenant James Holbrook, the pilot, runs through pre-flight checks. At 0847 hours, 20 minutes from the target, the formation encounters a weather front that scattered briefings promised wouldn't exist. Towering cumulus clouds force the lead squadron to climb. The high squadron banks left seeking clear air. The low squadron, 6 aircraft including Russo's bomber, continues straight ahead. Within 3 minutes, Devil's Daughter is alone. Russo sees them first. Contrails at 2 o'clock high, descending. He keys his intercom. Bandits 2 o'clock, lots of them. The pilot's response crackles through his headset. How many? Russo counts silhouettes, counts again. Jesus Christ, 50, 60, maybe more. The zeros orbit at a distance, evaluating. Their tactical discipline is evident. No impulsive solo attacks, no wasted ammunition. They are waiting for the perfect setup. The bomber's pilot makes his decision. Continue to target alone, or abort and risk the same fighter force during the return flight. He chooses the former. We're going in. Gunners, make every shot count. The Zeros attack at 0853 hours. The first wave commits 8 aircraft in a coordinated stern assault, 4 high, 4 low, approaching in pairs with 30-second intervals. Standard Japanese doctrine. Overwhelming firepower concentrated against a single turret position. Russo rotates his turret to track the lead pair descending from 4 o'clock high. Range, 800 yards. His modified ammunition load feeds into the twin Brownings. He doesn't fire, 700 yards. The Zeros grow larger in his sight. Their wings flash as they begin firing, 20mm cannon rounds and 7mm machine gun fire. 600 yards. Tracer rounds stream past Russo's turret. A 20mm shell punches through the bomber's vertical stabilizer 3 feet above his head. 500 yards. Russo's finger hovers over the trigger. His mind flashes to Sergeant Webb's warning, court-martial, 5 years, dishonorable discharge. The Zero's cannons flash. 20mm shells punch through the vertical stabilizer. Fuck the regulations. Russo presses the triggers. The twin 50 calibers erupt. Their combined rate of fire tears into the lead Zero at 600 rounds per minute. Every 5th round is a tracer. He watches the stream of fire walk across the fighter's engine cowling. The incendiary rounds detonate on impact. The Zero's engine compartment erupts in flame. Not smoke, not fire. Explosion. The Nakajima radial engine cylinders rupture as incendiary rounds ignite fuel vapor and lubricating oil simultaneously. The aircraft cartwheels left, trailing a comet tail of burning fuel, and spirals past the B-24's tail section. Russo doesn't watch it fall. His turret is already rotating right to track the second zero in the pair. He fires a 3-second burst. Incendiary rounds stitch across the fighter's fuselage. The fabric-covered control surfaces ignite. The zero pulls up sharply, trailing fire, then inverts and drops away. Elapsed time, 18 seconds. 2 fighters down. The second pair attacks from 5 o'clock low. Russo depresses his guns and fires. The lead zero takes a burst across its wing root. The incendiary rounds punch through the wing's internal fuel tank. The explosion blows the wing completely off. The aircraft tumbles end over end through the Liberator's prop wash. His ammunition counter shows 320 rounds remaining in the first belt. The second wave commits immediately. 12 zeros in a coordinated attack pattern designed to exploit the tail gunner's reload time. But Russo isn't reloading. His modified ammunition boxes feed continuously. 3 zeros approach from 7 o'clock high in a steep diving attack. Russo tracks the leader and fires. The incendiary rounds ignite the fighter's fuselage. The pilot bails out at 21,000 feet. Russo shifts to the wingman. A 4-second burst. Zero's canopy explodes in phosphorus fire. The aircraft's nose drops and it accelerates vertically into the ocean below. His intercom is chaos. The top turret gunner is firing continuously at beam attacks. The waist gunners are calling out targets. The pilot is shouting altitudes and headings. Russo blocks it all out. The zeros are no longer coordinating. They're swarming. 2 fighters attack simultaneously from 4 and 8 o'clock. Russo chooses 8 o'clock. The closer threat, he fires. Incendiary rounds walk across the zero's fuselage from tail to nose. The fighter explodes so close to the turret that burning debris hammers against his plexiglass dome. He rotates to 4 o'clock. The zero is already firing. Cannon rounds chew through the bomber's left horizontal stabilizer. Russo presses his triggers. Nothing. Jam. His training is automatic. Left hand pulls the charging handle. Right hand maintains turret traverse. The jam clears. Both guns resume firing. The zero takes the full burst through its cockpit. It rolls inverted and falls away. More zeros press the attack. After the 6th kill, his hands are shaking now, not from fear, from the realization that it's working. The modified ammunition is working. After the 9th kill, his ammunition counter shows 200 rounds remaining. Morrison's voice echoes in his head. Your guns will fail, but they haven't. They're still firing. The modified ammunition is working beyond anything Russo imagined. Every burst that hits produces not damage, but destruction. The lightweight zeros, built for maneuverability over survivability, cannot withstand the incendiary round's thermal devastation. A zero makes a gun run from directly astern, the optimal attack geometry. Russo centers it in his sight and holds the triggers down. 6 seconds of continuous fire. The fighter's entire fuselage erupts in flame. It doesn't pull away or evade. It simply disintegrates. Sections of burning airframe tumbling through the sky. His ammunition counter reads 140 rounds. 3 zeros remain in attack position. They orbit, evaluating. Then inexplicably they break off. Russo watches them turn east, back toward Rabble. After the 11th kill, the final 3 zeros break off. Russo watches them turn east, back toward Rabble. He looks at his ammunition counter, 40 rounds remaining, then at his gun barrels, glowing orange, warped from heat. Morrison was right about the thermal stress. Morrison was wrong about whether it was worth it. The engagement lasted 42 minutes. When the adrenaline subsides, Russo keys his intercom. His voice is hoarse from oxygen deprivation and shouting target calls he doesn't remember making. Tail turret. I'm out of ammunition. Guns are toast. The pilot's response carries equal parts relief and disbelief. How many did you get? Russo looks at his ammunition counter. He expended 960 rounds from his available 1,000. At the modified belt ratio, that represents 40 engagement sequences. He counts the fighters he saw burning or spinning down. 11 confirmed, he finally answers. Maybe more. The intercom goes silent. Devil's Daughter touches down at WWII at 1,534 hours, with 2 engines damaged, hydraulic systems compromised, and 187 bullet holes documented by ground crew inspectors. The tail turret guns are warped from thermal stress, exactly the failure mode that prohibited incendiary ammunition loads. Staff Sergeant Russo doesn't mention his modified ammunition to the immediate debrief officer. Neither does his crew. The official encounter report states, engaged multiple enemy fighters. 11 confirmed destroyed by tail gunner. Standard defensive tactics employed. But the numbers are impossible to ignore. 5th Bomber Command intelligence officers review the report with skepticism bordering on hostility. 11 confirmed kills by a single tail gunner exceeds the documented record for any bomber defensive position in the theater. The previous record, 6 confirmed kills, was achieved by a B-17 top turret gunner during the Battle of Midway. 3 days after the mission, an ordnance investigation officer arrives at WWII. He examines Devil's Daughter's tail turret. He photographs the warped gun barrels. He counts the ammunition belt links scattered across the turret floor. Then he does the mathematics. The 2-2-1 belt loading is unmistakable. Russo faces formal questioning on November 7th. He doesn't deny the modification. The physical evidence is conclusive. When asked why he violated explicit technical orders, his response enters the official record. I figured a court-martial beat dying. November 5, 1943, 5th Bomber Command Headquarters. Colonel Whitcomb is reviewing after-action reports when something catches his eye. Mission 43-312, Devil's Daughter, tail gunner, 11 confirmed kills. He reads it again. 11 confirmed kills by a single tail gunner. That's impossible. The previous theater record was 6 kills, achieved by a top turret gunner with 360-degree traverse. A tail gunner limited to a 60-degree arc couldn't possibly. Whitcomb calls for the detailed mission report. He reads about the engagement, the 60-plus zeros, the 42-minute battle, the impossible statistics. Then he reads the debrief notes. Aircraft returned with warped tail guns, thermal stress consistent with sustained heavy fire. Whitcomb picks up his phone. Get me Captain Morrison now. Morrison arrives 20 minutes later. Captain, explain this report. Morrison reads it. His face goes pale. Sir, this is the Russo incident. The what? Staff Sergeant Michael Russo. He's the tail gunner. His aircraft returned with evidence of prohibited ammunition loading. Whitcomb leans forward. What kind of evidence? 2-2-1 incendiary loading, sir. Explicitly prohibited under Technical Order 1943-157. And you were planning to handle this how? Morrison straightens. I've initiated court-martial proceedings, sir. Violation of a technical order in combat conditions. The paperwork is being prepared. Whitcomb stares at him. Let me make sure I understand, Captain. This sergeant violated regulations, used prohibited ammunition, and achieved 11 confirmed kills against overwhelming odds, saving his aircraft and his entire crew. Yes, sir, and your response is to court-martial him. So the regulations exist for. Tell me something, Captain. Whitcomb pulls out the casualty reports from the past 6 weeks. How many B-24s have we lost to fighter attacks since October 1st? Morrison hesitates. 47, sir. 47. 470 men. And what's the average number of confirmed kills achieved by our tail gunners during those engagements? Approximately 1 per 3 aircraft lost, sir. 1 per 3. Whitcomb stands. So our current doctrine results in a 47-16 loss ratio. But this sergeant who violated your precious regulations, achieves an 11-0 ratio. So with respect, the thermal stress could have, but didn't. Whitcomb's voice cuts like steel. Captain Morrison, I'm going to ask you a question, and I want an honest answer. If you were in that tail turret, 22,000 feet over the Bismarck Sea, with 60 enemy fighters attacking, would you rather have ammunition that follows regulations or ammunition that works? Morrison opens his mouth, closes it. I want this sergeant in my office tomorrow morning, not for court-martial, for a briefing. And I want a full technical analysis of this ammunition modification from your ordnance engineers. You have 48 hours. Sir, if we authorize, dismissed, Captain. November 6, 1943. Russo reports to headquarters expecting to be arrested. Instead, he's shown into Colonel Whitcomb's office. Staff Sergeant Russo, you violated a direct technical order. Yes, sir. You risked court-martial, destroyed government property, and endangered your aircraft. Yes, sir. Why? Russo meets the colonel's eyes. because I'd rather take my chances with a court-martial than watch my crew die while I'm firing ammunition that doesn't work. Silence. Whitcomb pulls out the mission report. 11 confirmed kills. 11. Do you understand what that means? It means the incendiary rounds work, sir. It means you may have just solved the tactical problem that's been killing my bomber crews for 3 months. Whitcomb leans forward. I'm authorizing a test program. You'll fly 3 more missions with your modified ammunition. Gun cameras will record every engagement. Engineers will monitor thermal stress. If your hit rate remains elevated and the guns don't fail catastrophically, we'll authorize 2-2-1 loading across the squadron. If the guns fail and your crew dies, that's on me, not you. But Sergeant, Whitcomb's voice hardens, if this works, you'll have saved more American lives than most Medal of Honor recipients. And if it doesn't work, at least we tried something instead of watching men die by the manual. Understood. Russo can barely speak. Yes, sir. Good, you're dismissed. And Sergeant, don't thank me. Thank whatever God you believe in that you survived long enough for someone to notice. Over the next 2 weeks, Russo flies 3 more combat missions with modified ammunition and full instrumentation. Mission 1, November 9th, Rabble. 2 confirmed kills, 340 rounds expended. Guns show moderate thermal stress but remain operational. Mission 2, November 14th, WWII. 3 confirmed kills, 480 rounds expended. 1 temporary jam cleared within seconds. Barrels show increased warping but do not fail. Mission 3, November 19th, Gazmata. 1 confirmed kill, 220 rounds expended. No mechanical failures. The engineering analysis is conclusive. The 2-2-1 loading does generate excessive heat, but if gunners fire in controlled bursts rather than sustained strings, the thermal stress remains manageable. The increased lethality against Japanese fighters more than compensates for the equipment risk. On December 1st, 1943, 5th Bomber Command issues Tactical Bulletin TB-43-118. Experimental authorization for 2-2-1 ammunition loading on B-24 aircraft engaged in long-range unescorted strike missions. Gunners will receive supplemental training in thermal management and burst fire discipline. The bulletin includes explicit language. This authorization is provisional pending further combat evaluation. Gunners utilizing modified ammunition loads accept increased equipment failure risk. But the authorization exists. Russo's engagement becomes a classified case study. Training films shot at gunnery schools incorporate the tactical lessons, not just the ammunition modification, but the engagement discipline that made it effective. Target prioritization, range discipline, burst control under impossible pressure. By February 1944, the 2-2-1 ammunition load becomes standard across the 5th Air Force's B-24 units. Hit rates for tail gunners increase from 8% to 21%, a nearly 3-fold improvement. Japanese zero-loss rates against B-24 formations climb sharply. Captured Japanese intelligence documents from Rabble, translated after the war, reference new American incendiary weapon of exceptional effectiveness. One report from February 1944 recommends avoiding stern attacks on Liberator formations due to enhanced defensive fire lethality. The modification saves aircraft. More importantly, it saves crews. Post-war analysis estimates the adjusted ammunition loading contributed to a 12% reduction in bomber losses to fighter attacks during the final 18 months of the Pacific Campaign. 12% of thousands of missions, hundreds of aircraft, thousands of airmen. The impact extends beyond the Pacific. The European theater adopts similar modifications by March 1944. Though German fighters' heavier construction and armor protection make incendiary rounds less devastating than against Japanese aircraft, the psychological impact proves significant. Luftwaffe pilots report increased reluctance to press attacks against bomber formations after witnessing the enhanced destructive effects. Devil's Daughter never flies combat again. The accumulated battle damage from the November 2nd mission requires extensive repair. Damaged control surfaces, compromised hydraulic systems, structural stress to the tail section. The aircraft becomes a training airframe at WWII, teaching ground crews how to assess and repair battle-damaged bombers. The tail turret guns, warped beyond repair by incendiary round heat, are shipped to Wright Field in Ohio for metallurgical analysis. Engineers use the failure data to design improved gun barrels with enhanced heat dissipation characteristics. The improved M2HB heavy barrel variant enters production in mid-1944, featuring a thicker barrel profile that withstands incendiary ammunition without thermal warping. This variant remains in U.S. military service today, 80 years later. Staff Sergeant Michael Russo completes 34 combat missions with the 43rd Bomb Group before rotating home to the United States in March 1944. He receives the Distinguished Flying Cross for the November 2nd engagement, though the citation carefully avoids mentioning his unauthorized ammunition modification. The medal recognizes extraordinary heroism and exceptional aerial gunnery skill without specifying the tactical innovation that made the kills possible. The Army Air Forces faces a bureaucratic dilemma. Russo violated explicit regulations, yet his violation demonstrably saved his crew and proved tactically superior to authorized procedures. Court-martial proceedings are quietly suspended. No formal charges appear in his service record. Russo never seeks publicity. When aviation journalists request interviews, he declines. When Boeing invites him to Seattle to discuss ammunition loading protocols, he politely refuses. "I just did what I needed to survive," he tells his commanding officer. Other people made it official. He returns to Pittsburgh, works at the Jones and Laughlin Steel Mill for 32 years, marries his high school sweetheart, Helen. They have 3 children. Russo rarely discusses the war. His children grow up knowing only that their father flew in bombers and did something with guns. The 43rd Bomb Group holds a reunion in San Antonio. Russo, now 67 years old, gray-haired and retired, attends reluctantly. Helen insists. On the second day, during the memorial service, a man approaches him, Staff Sergeant Robert Chen, former waist gunner on Pacific Prowler. "Sergeant Russo." Russo doesn't recognize him. "I flew in the 43rd, different squadron, but in January 1944 they issued us modified ammunition. The 2-2-1 loading." Russo nods slowly. Chen's voice breaks. "I was on the WWII raid, February 3rd. We got separated from formation. 20 Zeros attacked. I used the incendiary rounds, got 3 confirmed kills, drove off the rest. My crew survived that day because of ammunition you got court-martialed for using." "I didn't get court-martialed," Russo says quietly. "You could have, you risked it." Chen extends his hand. "My daughter was born in 1946. She exists because you decided regulations mattered less than lives. Thank you." Russo shakes his hand, uncomfortable with the emotion. "You would have done the same thing." "Maybe," Chen says, "but I didn't." "You did." Michael Russo dies in 2001 at age 81. His obituary in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette is 4 paragraphs long. Michael J. Russo, 81, of Squirrel Hill, died peacefully at home. U.S. Army Air Forces veteran, World War II, retired steelworker Jones and Laughlin, survived by wife Helen, 3 children, 7 grandchildren. It doesn't mention 11 confirmed kills. It doesn't mention modified ammunition. It doesn't mention that his unauthorized modification became standard doctrine across the Pacific Theater, saving an estimated 840 bomber crew lives. Just World War II veteran. But in every U.S. Air Force gunnery school taught today, in every tactical logistics course at the Pentagon, in every dissertation about Pacific bomber operations, there's a case study about the tail gunner who violated regulations and proved that sometimes survival requires breaking the rules. The M2HB heavy barrel 50 caliber machine gun, still in service today, 80 years later, was designed specifically to handle the thermal stress of incendiary ammunition loading. The design specifications came from analyzing the warped gun barrels of Devil's Daughter. Every time a modern gunner loads incendiary rounds, they're using a system that exists because one sergeant decided court-martial was better than dying. The greatest innovations don't come from following orders. They come from people who understand that rules exist to save lives, and sometimes breaking them saves more.